They never called me a failure. Not directly. That would have been too obvious. No, in my family, we used nicer words. Words like free spirit or just figuring it out. But behind those words was the same truth everyone quietly agreed on. I hadn't made it. Not like Logan. My younger brother was the family's golden ticket. Ivy League educated, full-ride scholarship. Now a rising cardiac specialist at a top hospital in Denver. Clean-cut, media-trained, dating the governor's daughter. Basically, the human LinkedIn page. At every family brunch, his name came up like clockwork. My mom had a full photo album on her phone labeled Logan's Awards. Meanwhile, I got introduced like this. This is our daughter, Harper. She works with teenagers in Oregon. That's it. No mention of what kind of work. No mention of what I used to be. Just vague enough to sound unimpressive, like I was a substitute teacher or ran summer art camps. And I let them think that, because it was easier than telling them the truth. Easier than watching their eyes scan my face, searching for some version of pride they could pretend to have. The truth is, I used to run toward fire. I was a firefighter for almost a decade in Arizona. I've carried bodies, broken windows with my boot, screamed through a respirator while dragging someone's father or daughter or stranger out of a burning wreck. I've had third-degree burns on both arms. I've coughed up soot and blood after 18-hour shifts. I've held the hands of people who didn't make it just so they didn't die alone. And yet somehow, that never made it into the family newsletter. I left the firehouse 5 years ago without much of an exit, no farewell party, no speeches, just one email, one badge in an envelope, mailed from a cheap studio apartment 3 states away. Since then, I've lived quietly. I rent a 1-bedroom above a bookstore in Ashland. I teach emergency prep to teens, basic first aid, how to build a fire, how to get out of a house when the alarms go off. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And I sleep better now. Most nights, anyway. But even now, years later, I still hear my mom's voice sometimes, on the phone, casual as ever, saying things like, well, not everyone's meant to have a career, like my life is a gap year I never returned from. They think I left because I couldn't handle it, couldn't cut it. The truth is messier, and no one ever asked. Until one night, at a fundraiser I wasn't even supposed to be at, someone did. Not my family, not my brother, a stranger. A man in a gray suit who turned to me mid-conversation, squinted like he recognized something, and asked, "Were you there? Lake Hill, 2016? And that changed everything. Lake Hill, 2016. That name doesn't mean much to most people. But for me, it was the moment everything cracked open. It was supposed to be a routine call, cabin fire up in the mountains near Flagstaff. Remote, midwinter, no cell signal. A bunch of hikers had rented the place for some team-building thing. What we rolled up to wasn't routine. The whole structure was already breathing smoke from the roof, windows popping, heat shimmering off the snow, and there were still people inside. I remember grabbing my gear with shaking hands, not from fear, adrenaline, that razor focus you only get when everything depends on what you do next. The rest of my team split to the sides. I went in through the front. The air inside was thick, like trying to breathe through boiling syrup. Visibility? Maybe 6 inches in front of my face. My mask fogged instantly. I followed the sounds. Coughing, wood cracking, someone screaming. I found the last guy near the back, half conscious, wedged behind a collapsed beam. His leg was trapped. I didn't know his name. Still don't. I just remember the look in his eyes, like he knew this was it. I told him, "Don't sleep. I won't let you die." Over and over, until I believed it too. I managed to lift the beam just enough to slide him free. I don't know how. My shoulder was already burning. I think I tore something, but I kept dragging. We made it to the front door, and that's when the roof gave out behind us. The blast of heat was so strong, it blew my mask halfway off. I remember falling forward into the snow with his jacket still in my grip, my arms blistered raw, his blood mixing with mine. Then nothing. I woke up 2 days later in a burn unit, 3rd degree on my left arm and parts of my neck, skin grafts, rehab. No one from my family showed up. Not a call, not a card. My captain visited once. He looked at me and said, "You did good, Harper. You did real good." That was the only sentence anyone ever said about it. The state quietly processed a commendation. A private grant came a few months later, $275,000. Exceptional service, life-saving, heroism under extreme risk. I got the check in the mail, no ceremony, no handshake, just a folded letter with my name and a number. I stared at it for hours. I didn't cash it. I didn't spend a dime. I shoved it into a fireproof envelope and hid it at the back of a drawer I never opened. I didn't want to feel like I got paid to hurt. Or worse, paid to be forgotten. When my hands started working again, barely, I resigned. No goodbye. No badge ceremony. Just silence. I didn't even tell my parents. I figured, why? They never asked what happened. Not once. A year later, my mom posted a Facebook album titled "Proud of My Son," and it was 27 photos of Logan in a lab coat. No caption about the sister who walked out of a fire with another person's life in her arms. No mention that I couldn't grip a spoon for 6 months. I wasn't looking for applause, I just wanted to exist. But in their version of our family, I had already been edited out. Or maybe I never made it in. And that's why when the man at the gala recognized me, not for my name, but for my voice, for that moment inside the flames, I felt something I hadn't in years. Seen. Not admired, not praised, just seen. And that night was only the beginning. I wasn't even supposed to be there that night. The gala was for medical donors and hospital staff, which I was neither. But Mom had insisted, said it'd be good to show support for Logan. That meant dressing up, showing up, and shutting up. So I did. I wore a black dress I hadn't touched in years, pulled my hair into something halfway presentable, and spent most of the evening hugging the edge of the ballroom like wallpaper. The room sparkled. Glass chandeliers, champagne flutes, suits that probably cost more than my rent. Logan was in his element, laughing with his boss, posing for photos, Mom beaming like she'd personally raised a Nobel laureate. I was halfway through a glass of flat soda when someone beside me paused mid-sentence. He'd been talking to a group of donors. Older man, silver hair, tailored suit, the kind of posture that screams influence. He turned slowly, looking right at me. "Excuse me," he said, "but were you at Lake Hill? Winter of 2016? My stomach dropped. I nodded cautiously. "I thought so," he said, stepping closer, his voice a mix of wonder and disbelief. "You pulled me out. You kept saying, 'Don't sleep.' I heard you through your mask." The conversation stopped around us. Forks froze. Logan turned. My mother blinked like she'd misheard. And the man, his voice full, steady, said, "She saved my life." The room shifted. People stared. I felt every pair of eyes land on me like weight. "The state gave her a commendation," he added, "and a grant. Over $250,000, if I remember right. And she never mentioned it?" I didn't speak. I couldn't. It was like standing in a house of mirrors where every reflection showed a version of me they never bothered to see. Logan's face drained of color. Mom looked like she was calculating how to rewrite the moment in real time. I just stood there, caught between a past no one acknowledged and a present too loud to escape. For the first time in years, I wasn't just Harper the sister. I wasn't just the woman who works with kids. I was something they couldn't explain away. And they didn't like that. After the gala, I got a text from Mom. "No, how are you? No, we're proud. Just dinner this Sunday. Everyone will be there. Dress nice." I stared at the message for a long time before replying, and even longer before hitting send, because deep down, I knew this wasn't about celebration. This was a setup. I just didn't know what kind. Not yet. Sunday came too fast. I almost didn't go. Spent the whole afternoon pacing in my tiny apartment, staring at my closet like it held answers. In the end, I wore jeans and a blazer. Comfortable, clean, not flashy. If they wanted a show, they'd have to settle for honesty. The house hadn't changed. Same white shutters, same fake tulips in the vase by the door, same smell of cinnamon something floating from the kitchen. But there was something off this time. Like the air was too still. Manufactured. I stepped in and froze. There was a banner, literally, a red one hanging across the archway. Welcome, our hero. My face flushed. I hadn't told anyone I was coming, and this wasn't pride. It was marketing. In the dining room, the table was set like a Thanksgiving spread. Roast chicken, glazed carrots, my favorite mushroom risotto from when I was 10. Everyone was there. Aunts, cousins, neighbors I hadn't seen since prom. Logan pulled out a chair and said, "Sit next to me. We've got some things to talk about." I already knew. I could feel it. It wasn't about recognition. It was about what came after the recognition. They weren't gathering to celebrate me. They were circling a resource. Dinner was all praise at first. "We had no idea," Aunt Carla said. "Truly inspiring." "You should give a speech next time," someone added. "People love stories like yours." Logan smiled too much. Mom kept touching my hand like she hadn't ignored a decade of silence. And just when dessert hit the table, a strawberry tart I used to love, Mom leaned forward and said it. "You still have the money, right?" My spoon stopped midair. Logan jumped in like it was nothing. "Look, Harper, we get it. You earned that. No one's questioning that. But I have this research proposal, cardiovascular treatment for underserved communities, and the grant fell through last minute. It's a meaningful project. If you could contribute even a portion of the one thing I had never touched. The money I never spent because it wasn't just dollars. It was trauma, wrapped in a check." I set the spoon down. "It's not a family asset," I said calmly. "It's not on the table." The mood cracked instantly. Logan's jaw flexed. Mom blinked like she hadn't rehearsed the moment going any other way. Someone tried to joke about starting a GoFundMe, but it landed like a lead balloon. I sat through the rest of the meal with a polite smile, nodding through recycled stories and veiled disappointment. I didn't trust a word. That night, when I got home, there was a bouquet on my doorstep. Lilies and white roses. No card. Just an envelope tucked into the stems that read, "Family is where we return. Don't forget that." My hand shook. I knew the handwriting. Logan. And another note slipped out. "You're the light, Harper. Let's build something together." I should have felt flattered. Instead, I felt watched, calculated, like my story had suddenly become useful, and I wasn't sure if I was a sister anymore or a bank account with good PR. But I hadn't even seen the worst yet. That was coming, and it was dressed in a suit. The message came on a Thursday night. Short, cold, no emojis, no warmth, just, "We're having a family meeting this weekend. Please come." It was from Mom, not "Love Mom," just her name, like a stranger signing a business email. And maybe that's what this had become. Business. I stared at the text for a full minute before replying, "Okay." Against every gut instinct I had. Maybe some tiny, reckless part of me still wanted to believe this was going to be different. Maybe this time, they'd finally hear me. Not talk at me, not smile through me, just see me. But I should have known better. When I walked into that house on Saturday, it felt less like a living room and more like a courtroom. Every chair dragged into a semicircle, every face stiff with anticipation. Logan sat on one side of the room, hands folded. My dad stood by the fireplace like he was about to deliver a eulogy, and beside him was a man in a navy blazer holding a leather folder. "This is Ted," Dad said quickly, like ripping off a Band-Aid. "He's helping us navigate a delicate situation." A family friend, they called him. I knew the look. He was a lawyer. Estate planning, maybe. Or crisis management. Either way, this wasn't a gathering. It was a pitch. Aunt Debbie started with a tissue already in hand. "Logan's made some mistakes," she said, wringing it between her fingers. "But he's not a bad person. He got in over his head. And these people, these loan sharks, they're dangerous." Mom added, "We're scared. If he gets arrested, If this story gets out, it won't just hurt him, it'll stain the family name forever. And then Dad looked at me, voice low, measured. Harper, this is about protecting all of us. I took a breath. What about me? Silence. Real silence. Like they hadn't considered the question. Has anyone here ever asked what I needed? What it cost me to survive? Or did I just become a walking insurance policy once you realized I'd stayed quiet too long? They all looked like I'd spoken another language. Logan looked down. Mom's mouth opened, but nothing came out. So I made the first move. I'll give him $25,000. That's it. On 2 conditions. Gasps. Immediately. Then a wave of polite relief like I just tossed them a lifeline. But I didn't stop. 1. He enrolls in a licensed gambling rehabilitation program for no less than 60 days. 2. None of you will ever mention the rest of that money again. Not to me, not to each other, not to anyone. Logan perked up, nodded, did the whole gratitude act. You're an angel, Harp. I swear I'll fix this. He tried to hug me. I didn't move. I left not long after that, drove home in silence. And when I got back, I stared at my reflection in the hallway mirror and whispered to myself, "You're not an angel. You're just a fool who keeps hoping they'll change." But I transferred the money, and for 10 days, I heard nothing. No calls, no texts, no guilt trips. For a moment, I believed maybe, just maybe, they were finally respecting my boundaries. Until I opened Instagram. And there he was, Logan Carter, sunglasses, cocktail in hand, caption, "Work hard, play harder, Viva Vegas." In the background, a luxury suite, some girl draped over his arm like a designer jacket. Another photo at a blackjack table, chips stacked like trophies. My stomach sank. He hadn't just broken the agreement, he'd thrown it a party. I called. No answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. So I sent one last text. Next time, don't trade tears for cash. They've lost their value. Then I blocked him. Not out of spite, but because I finally understood he was never going to stop. Not until I did. But I hadn't realized just how far he'd go to punish me for that silence. That part was still coming. And it wouldn't arrive by phone. It would arrive as a storm. It started with a ping, just one. A random notification on a Monday morning. I was sipping burnt coffee, half-dressed, trying to prep slides for the fire safety workshop I was giving that afternoon. Then another ping, then 3 more, and within 10 minutes my phone was vibrating nonstop like it was begging me to turn it off. I thought maybe something had gone viral, maybe the gala video, maybe that donor speech, but no, this wasn't admiration, it was venom. I opened one message. "Wow, real hero energy, letting your brother drown while you sit on a pile of blood money." My chest went cold. Another said, "Firefighter turned narcissist, enjoy hell." I thought it was a troll, maybe someone from Logan's past trying to stir up drama. Until I clicked the link someone had sent. A Reddit post. Title, "My sister used to be a firefighter. Now she hoards $275K while our family collapses." No name, no proof, just a concerned brother. But every word, every detail, it screamed Logan. I read through the comments, thousands of them, some defending me, most not. So much for sisterly love. Sounds like she wanted a medal, not a family. Another woman who thinks trauma makes her special. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even move. I just sat there staring at the screen while the internet set fire to my life. And by the end of the week, it wasn't just Reddit anymore. A blog picked it up. The hero with the cold heart. Then a regional tabloid ran with it. Big headline. My face. My story. Twisted into something unrecognizable. Parents at the training center started pulling their kids. One mom emailed the board. "I'm not comfortable with someone who's been accused of emotional abuse handling emergency drills for minors." The board launched a review. Standard protocol, they said, but their eyes told a different story. The kind of look you get when people don't believe in smoke without fire. I didn't cry, not that week, not even when my old captain texted me, "Saw the article, hope you're okay." I just nodded at the screen like he could see me. That night I opened the safe. The check was still there, still uncashed, still wrinkled at the edges like a ghost that refused to die quietly. I held it in my hand for a long time. It wasn't money anymore. It was proof of everything I'd gone through, everything I'd survived. And now they were trying to twist it into shame, as if it wasn't enough that I nearly died pulling a stranger out of a burning cabin. They wanted to make it my fault for surviving at all. Then came the break-in. I came home late from a meeting with the board. The door was shut, no signs of forced entry, but something was wrong, off, like the air had shifted. I walked into the living room and froze. The window was shattered, glass everywhere. The safe was open, files missing, and on the floor, one sheet of paper, handwritten in rough ink. "If you don't know how to share, someone will decide for you." No name, no signature. But I didn't need one. I knew. I called the police, filed a report. They asked about cameras, suspects. I told them who I thought it was. They took notes, nodded, said they'd follow up. But I could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe me. Or worse, they thought I was making it up for attention. I stopped sleeping, stopped answering calls. My hands shook even holding a cup of tea. I walked through my apartment like I was a guest in someone else's home. I hadn't felt that kind of fear since Lake Hill. Only back then, it was fire that almost killed me. This time, it was family. Then one afternoon, I got an email. Subject line, "We owe you more than a medal." It was from Everett, the man I'd saved, the one who recognized me at the gala. He asked to meet, said it was important. We met at a quiet coffee shop on the east side of town, one of those places where no one looks up from their laptop and the mugs don't match. He was already seated when I walked in. No suit, no flash, just him and a folder. He looked up and said, "Harper, I owe you more than just my life." Then he pushed the folder toward me. "I hired a private investigator," he said. "After I saw what happened to you online, I couldn't stay silent." I opened the folder. Bank transfers with forged signatures, building surveillance footage, security camera stills of Logan letting someone into my complex. And the kicker? Metadata linking the original Reddit draft to Logan's hospital laptop. I stared at the pages, my breath caught in my throat. All the doubt, all the gaslighting, it was real. "You can press charges," Everett said gently. "Identity theft, fraud, possibly conspiracy." I looked at him, my voice low. "If I do this, I'm burning what's left of my family." He shook his head. "No, Harper, you're not burning it. You're walking out of the fire." And for the first time in a long time, I believed him. The courthouse smelled like old wood and cold air. I stood outside for a long time before walking in, wearing a navy blazer that didn't quite fit right and holding a binder that suddenly felt way too light for how heavy this moment was. No lawyer, no entourage, just me. Logan sat at the defendant's table, smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped, dark circles blooming like bruises under his eyes. He didn't look up, and behind him, our parents, rigid, stiff, avoiding my gaze like I was radioactive. The judge called it a fraud hearing, but to me it felt more like a reckoning. The prosecutor started with the basics: bank records, signature analysis, the break-in. Then came the security footage. Logan buzzed into my building. Logan, guiding a man in gloves and a backpack through the lobby. Logan, pretending it wasn't personal. The courtroom stayed quiet, but I could feel the temperature shift. A few soft gasps, a couple murmurs, and then Exhibit D, a printout of the Reddit post with digital fingerprints traced back to Logan's hospital-issued laptop. You could hear the floor drop out of the room, but they weren't done. The audit showed Logan had solicited over $200,000 in donations from colleagues under a fake medical foundation, supposedly for pediatric research. In reality, It paid for designer hotel suites, high-stakes poker, bottle service, and Instagram clout. My mom was called to the stand. At first, she tried to spin it. He was under pressure, she said. Hospitals are brutal places. It's not easy being a doctor. But when the prosecutor read aloud a fake email she'd forwarded, sent from the non-existent foundation with her blessing, her face crumpled. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know it had gone this far. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, heart steady, hands not shaking for the first time in weeks. I don't want my brother in prison, I said, but I do want the truth to matter, not for revenge, for peace. I turned toward Logan. He still wouldn't look at me. I used to think silence would keep the peace, I said. If I absorbed the shame, the trauma, the betrayal, then maybe one day it'd all pass. But silence isn't peace, it's corrosion. It eats away at you until you don't recognize yourself anymore. Peace comes from truth, even when it hurts, even when it breaks the people you wish would change. The judge ruled swiftly. Logan was fined, ordered to repay the stolen funds, suspended from practicing medicine for 2 years, and required to complete psychiatric rehabilitation. He didn't fight it, just nodded once, slow, like someone who finally saw the fire creeping toward their feet. I walked out of the courthouse without looking back. Outside, a woman approached me. Gray pantsuit, clipboard in hand, warm eyes. You're Harper, right? She asked. I run a nonprofit that supports women-led safety education programs. I've read about your work. I'd love to talk about expanding it, maybe build something for rural communities. I blinked. You're serious? She nodded. We think you're the kind of person who doesn't just teach kids how to survive. You teach them how to rebuild. That night, I sat on my fire escape with the old check in my hand. What was left of it, anyway? After all the retreats, the bandages, the buried grief, I lit a match, not to burn it, but to feel the heat, just for a second. Just enough to remember where I'd come from. Then I opened my laptop and launched the first draft of something new, the Ember Project. A place for kids to learn life skills that matter, not to be heroes, but to stay whole. To stand in the smoke and say, I'm still here. I didn't build it for my family. I built it for everyone who's ever been told their pain was too quiet to count. And when the first students walked through the door, some of them were the same ones whose parents had pulled them out during the scandal. One girl handed me a note. Thanks for teaching us how to keep going. I smiled. This wasn't about fire anymore. It was about light. And it was finally mine to carry on my own terms. But before I could call it closure, something else was waiting. A knock, a familiar voice, and a small wooden box that would change everything again. But this time, not with pain. With something like home. It was a Saturday morning in early spring, one of those gray sky days where the air still clung to winter, but hope kind of hovered anyway. I stood on the front steps of the Ember Project with a clipboard in one hand and a cup of gas station coffee in the other. The yard buzzed with energy, laughter, footsteps, walkie-talkies crackling from mock drills. We had over 50 kids enrolled now, some from shelters, some from tiny rural schools that didn't even have gym teachers. They were learning how to use fire extinguishers, how to stop bleeding, how to read a smoke alarm that isn't theirs. And for the first time in forever, I felt like every scar had led to something solid, something real. One boy, maybe 10, wiry, big eyes, ran up to me and blurted out, "Miss Harper, I'm going to be a firefighter just like you." I laughed, but it wasn't the nervous, polite kind. It was full, whole, honest. I knelt beside him and said, "That's brave, kid. You sure you're ready for a lot of early mornings in muddy boots?" He nodded like it was the easiest yes in the world. That's when Everett showed up, carrying a tray of breakfast sandwiches and wearing the same old brown jacket he always wore when he wasn't trying to impress anyone. No suit, no big announcement, just him. And something in his eyes that felt like a lighthouse after too long at sea. "You saved me twice," he said, offering one of the sandwiches. Once from fire, once from letting your story die quietly. Now I want to build something with you, something that keeps people warm instead of burning them down. Then he handed me a small wooden box. Inside was a simple silver band, brushed matte, no diamonds. Just one thing engraved on the inside, a single flicker, a flame. I didn't say yes right away. I just closed the box slowly, looked him in the eye, and said, "Okay, let's build." And just like that, it felt like the air changed. Like after all the smoke and silence, maybe there was something left to rebuild with. Later that week, I got a letter from my parents. No flowery apologies, no guilt, just one line. "We understand now. You didn't need to be a doctor to make us proud." I folded it carefully and tucked it into the drawer next to an old photo. Me, in uniform, face streaked with ash, eyes wild with adrenaline. That girl had no idea how far she'd have to crawl to be seen again. But she did it, and then some. At the next fire drill, a girl asked me, "Are you still scared of fire?" I looked at her. "Everyone's scared of fire," I said. "But if you understand what it burns, you learn how to protect what matters." That answer wasn't from a textbook. It was from everything I'd lived through. The courtroom, the betrayal, the rebuild. I turned back toward the mock burn pit as the camera rolled, Everett capturing footage for our new training grant. And in that frame, there I was. No makeup, no filter, no fear, just me, fully seen, fully alive. And maybe that's the real revenge, not rage, not money, not even justice, just standing tall, refusing to shrink, choosing to rise where people thought you'd stay ash. Because in the end, what we survive doesn't define us. What we become afterward, that's the part they can't steal. A week after the grant was approved and the Ember Project officially got its next round of funding, I found myself alone in the classroom after all the kids had gone home. The folding chairs were still warm, safety posters curling slightly at the edges, and the last notes from the day's fire drill still echoed in my head. But the silence? This time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't punishment. It was soft, earned, real. I sat down at the edge of the mat where we usually practice drop roll cover techniques, took off my shoes, and just let myself be. Not proving anything, not explaining, just breathing. Outside the window, dusk settled over the field like someone gently turning down the lights. No headlines, no courtrooms, no urgent knocks or panicked calls, just the quiet hum of sprinklers kicking on in the distance and the faint smell of burnt sugar from the s'mores demo we did that afternoon. And then, my phone buzzed. I hesitated. For a second, I almost didn't check it. But curiosity still lives somewhere under the armor. It was a message, from Logan, just 2 lines. "I know I can't undo what I did, but I saw what you built. You turned hell into a haven. I hope you're okay." I stared at it. No ask, no manipulation, just words. For a second, I felt the old reflex kick in, the one that wanted to forgive before healing. But I didn't reply. Not because I hated him, because I was finally full. I didn't need closure that required him. I didn't need to carry the weight of everyone's guilt just to feel worthy. I closed the message, locked my phone, and leaned back until I could see the ceiling tiles above me. And I thought, maybe this is what survival sounds like. Not sirens, not applause, not even apologies, just stillness, just space to grow. Later that evening, Everett stopped by with tea and an extra hoodie he said I always stole anyway. We sat on the steps in front of the building, watching the sky shift from lavender to deep blue. "You okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah. Weirdly, yeah." He nudged my arm. "You ever think about what comes next?" I smiled. "All the time, but I'm not chasing it anymore. I think I'll just walk toward it and see if it meets me halfway." He raised his mug. "To walking, and not burning." I clinked mine against his. And right there, in the half-light of almost night, I realized something. Some battles aren't meant to be won. They're meant to be ended, so we can finally begin. There's this moment, right after a controlled burn finishes, where the ground still smolders but the flames are gone. It's quiet, You can smell the charcoal, see the blackened earth, and if you wait long enough, you might even catch the first signs of green poking through. Tiny, fragile, defiant. That's where I am now. Not in crisis, not in defense, just rebuilding. The Ember Project expanded. We've got 2 satellite programs now, one in a reservation town up north, another near a border shelter in El Paso. Kids come in with stories heavier than their backpacks, and they leave with calloused hands and eyes that know how to find exits. We teach them CPR, yes. Fire safety, sure. But more than that, we teach them how to be seen, how to know their worth before anyone else tries to define it. A local journalist came by last week, same one who ran the headline about my betrayal years ago. She apologized, said she'd gotten it wrong. I didn't gloat. I just handed her a copy of our student zine and said, "Let them write the story now." She smiled, then asked what advice I'd give someone going through what I did, and I told her this. When someone tries to erase you, don't argue, don't beg, build something too solid to ignore. Let your legacy speak louder than their lies. I don't know what Logan's doing now. Last I heard, he moved states, changed his name, started over. I hope he's learning something softer than ambition. I hope he finds a kind of peace that doesn't come with dollar signs. As for my parents, we're not close, but we're polite. They send birthday cards. They forwarded an article once about the Ember Project making it into a national magazine. No handwritten note, just a highlighter mark across my name. It's not love, but it's acknowledgement. And maybe that's enough for now. Everett and I still don't wear rings. We don't need them. We build things together. Gardens, lesson plans, slow mornings. That's our ceremony. That's our promise. One quiet Sunday, as we were packing up after a training session, one of the students, tiny girl with wild curls and oversized gloves, walked up and asked, "Do you still think about the fire?" I paused, then said, "I do, but it doesn't scare me anymore." She grinned. "Me neither." And in that moment, I realized the greatest revenge isn't making them feel what they did to you. It's becoming someone they never expected you'd survive to be. Someone solid, someone soft, someone still standing. Sometimes life burns everything down, not to punish you, but to clear the space for something stronger. And the thing that rises, that's yours. No one else gets to name it.